everyone, welcome to Cash Up, a weekly show where we get to converse with amazing folks in DFIR. And today I am so excited to be joined by Mitch Kaiser. Mitch is the Director of Cybercrimes Unit for the St. Joseph County Prosecutor's Office in South Bend, Indiana, and an adjunct professor in the Computing and Digital Technologies program at the University of Notre Dame. Mitch has been in law enforcement since 1989. He holds an associate's degree in criminal justice from Indiana University, a bachelor's degree in psychology from Indiana University, and a master's degree in psychology from the University of Notre Dame. Mitch holds several certifications, including the Certified Computer Examiner, CCE, and the Magnet Certified Forensics Examiner, MCFE. He's been recognized as a digital forensics expert by both state and federal courts and has conducted over 2,500 digital examinations. Mitch is also the coordinator of the Cybercrimes Notre Dame Intern Program, which he regularly speaks and shares about the innovative way his lab utilizes student interns as sworn digital forensics investigators, helping solve the issues pertaining to staffing while simultaneously providing mentorship and a career path to undergraduate students. He's spoken at the Magnet Virtual Summit about leadership in forensics labs and has participated in panel discussions on adapting forensics labs in the times of COVID. I first met Mitch as he oversaw an incredible summer camp for high school age girls in digital forensics at Notre Dame, taught by the sworn investigator interns from Notre Dame. He's also a mentor to me because of his incredible leadership, and I consider it a distinct pleasure to know him. Mitch also has an affinity for penguins, so keep an eye out for them when seeing any of his presentations. And with that, welcome, Mitch. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, Jessica. Thank you.
So really excited to have you on. As you know, you've been such an inspiration to me and so many others, especially in the way that you lead and share and everything you've accomplished. So
thank you. I am excited to be here just to kind of talk about all kinds of things.
I promise we'll have a lot of fun today. So in getting to be here and starting your law enforcement career in 1989, we've got to know what's the Mitch Kaiser origin story?
I think, like most people, where you end up isn't where you intended to end up. One thing I tell all of my students in my classes that every one of them, they're upper level classmen in college, they probably have some sort of idea of how their career trajectory and their life trajectory is going to go. They're going to graduate, they're going to get a degree, they're going to get a job in such and such field and go on. And I tell them, whatever you have in mind, throw it out the window. It is not going to happen. And to be able to adapt to that, because this thought that you have of what's your career and life is going to be like, it's not going to happen. It didn't happen for me. When I graduated from high school, I started in college, and I was going to be an accounting major.
Oh,
I
did not expect that.
Took 1 year worth of accounting at various business courses, and my reaction to it was, oh my, this is the most boring thing in the world. Had absolutely no interest in it. So I started looking at, okay, what interest me? What kind of courses could I take just for fun? And I took several criminal justice courses and was very interested in it. Met a couple of police officers who were either finishing undergrad degrees or master's degrees. And one of them invited me to come do a ride along with them.
Oh.
And I thought that sounds like fun. So the first time I rode with them, I was hooked. Just absolutely loved it.
I love that.
Talked to my, girlfriend at the time, current wife, who we started dating in high school when we were 17 years old, got married at 24, and have been married going on almost 30 years now. So,
wow.
So she signed up for, I'm marrying this accountant. So I came in and told her that this whole police thing really kind of interests me. Her initial reaction to it is, if you want to be a police officer, you are not marrying me.
Oh my gosh.
I've
met your wife. She is absolutely incredible, amazing. And I could not see her saying that. So that's funny,
Yeah.
but I know her as the supportive law enforcement spouse, so that's very different.
Oh, yeah. And she very much has been, as you'll hear as I'm continuing into my story here. So we talked about it, and she's like, well, if that's what you want to do, passion for it, go for it. So I ended up switching to criminal justice and got an associate's degree in criminal justice. Right after I got that, I had a job offer from the South Bend Police Department as a police officer.
Nice.
So I accepted that job offer with the intention of, at some point, I will go back and finish the bachelor's degree. And then life happened. So I accept the position at South Bend Police Department. In 1989, started as a patrol officer there. 2.5 years into my police career there, it was the time of the riots going on in Los Angeles due to the Rodney King and the officers being acquitted out there. On the second night of the rioting in Los Angeles, throughout the country, there were pockets of violence in every city, including ours here in South Bend. On the second evening of the rioting, around 9:30 at night, an anonymous person called the front desk of the police department and simply said, a police officer's going down tonight, and hung up the phone. About 15 minutes later, I was actually training a brand new officer. We were patrolling in an area, and we pulled a car over for just running a stop sign violation. As I'm standing outside the car talking to the people in the car, I get ambushed by a couple of people who had seen the traffic stop, came up hiding by a house, and opened fire on me.
My God.
During that, I was actually shot 4 times and left with some pretty significant injuries from it. How you said, you're surprised my wife said, hey, if you're going to be a police officer, you're not going to marry me. Here it is 2 years into the police career, and she gets the knock on the door in the middle of the night.
That's exactly what she feared.
Yep, Mitch has been shot. Fortunately, it wasn't as bad as it could have been, in that I am still alive. I did have to go through, obviously, several surgeries, physical therapy, and it actually left me with permanent injuries due to nerve damage, where my left leg below the knee is paralyzed. I can't feel it, move it, and I wear a special brace to be able to walk. I had to learn to walk all over again because of the injuries there. So through physical therapy, I built everything back up and actually returned to full street capacity on the South Bend Police Department, and worked for 8 more years as a street officer, still doing the exact same thing. During that time, I have lingering pain issues because of nerve damage, and it got to the point of where riding around in a car 8 hours a day was starting to really bother me and be kind of a distraction. So I made the decision to retire from the South Bend Police Department. So I did a little over 10 years total on the department. So I retired, and I think, okay, what do I want to do now? I ended up taking various computer certification courses, ended up getting MCSE, took networking courses, stuff like that, and was hired by a company here in South Bend as a network engineer and a programmer. It's like a bunch of Java programming. So my job was working on their network and also doing web development for them. It was a great job. It paid great money compared to law enforcement. I was bored out of my mind with it.
Well, you may have been bored, but oh my gosh, the networking skills you learned and the development skills tied with the law enforcement. I mean, you may not realize it at the time, but it sounds like you're setting yourself up with the exact skills that you need in this profession.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm working my networking job, and a new prosecutor gets elected here in St. Joe County, and this is back in 2003, and his chief deputy was a prosecutor that I'd known my entire police career. He started as a brand new deputy prosecutor when I started as a police officer, and we've known each other and have kind of come up through the ranks together. And he contacted me at that time because he knew I had some good computer training, and I'd gone to a couple of digital forensics courses. And we had a discussion that, technology crimes, the internet, all that's really going to take off. And we essentially created a position as an investigator in the prosecutor's office where I resigned my tech job, came to work for the prosecutor as an investigator, and for the next 6 years did technology investigations and digital forensics. During that time, went to several more schools. At the time, we established a unit called the High Tech Crimes Unit that had a couple of other full-time officers working in it, and really worked a lot of good cases, a lot of ICAC cases, and really brought digital investigation to St. Joseph County here. Around 2008, when the economy really took a downturn at that time, St. Joe County government received instructions that everyone must cut 10% from their budget for the next year. Unfortunately, the part that was cut from the prosecutor's office was this high-tech crimes unit.
So in 2008, we got to just think about that time. So this is a year before we start seeing smartphones, right?
Yes.
A year before the landscape changes. So St. Joseph County was actually ahead of the curve, starting this unit in 2003, and probably one of the earlier organizations to have a high-tech crimes unit. But then the time in which, unfortunately, they're doing this cut is probably within 6 months to a year of the transformation in our industry. So that's
right. Yeah. Fortunately, there were a couple of full-time officers in the unit who were from individual departments. One in particular was able to keep doing the same type of work through his department. So it wasn't a complete cut in services. It just went down to, like a lot of jurisdictions, of one person doing it. And that's what he did. So here I am again, 2008, thinking, okay, another juncture in my life. What do I want to do now? I went into the private sector as a digital forensics consultant doing private civil examinations. And remember way back in 1989 when I said, at some point I'll go back and finish that bachelor's degree. I decided, okay, I'm going to return to school. So I told Lynn, my wife, that I'm going to go back to school and finish my bachelor's degree. And she's like, great, in criminal justice, since I already had the associate's degree. And I'm like, no, not in criminal justice. She's like, oh, computer science. And I'm like, no, not computer science either. She's like, well, in what? I'm like, psychology. And I got to look, why psychology? And I told her, I said, from the years of working cases, especially ICAC cases, and working with child sexual offenders and interviewing them, it just fascinated me, the whole psychology of it, the justifications of it, how they minimize things, the cognitive distortions they have, just all of that. And I just wanted to learn more about it just for the sake of learning. So I went back to IU and finished up the psychology degree. Towards the end of that, I was contacted by the director of the Computing and Digital Technologies Department at Notre Dame and asked if I would be interested in working as an adjunct teaching the digital forensics course.
Wow.
Yes, fantastic. So I started teaching one course a semester, continued on and was accepted into graduate school at Notre Dame and got a master's degree in psychology.
Of course, still in psychology.
Right, still in psychology. Right after I finished that, the chief deputy prosecutor, who back in 2003 approached me about coming to work to do technology crimes, he was now the prosecutor in St. Joe County. He was elected the main prosecutor, and he and I had a meeting, and I told him that I'm interested in getting out of the private sector again, because, it was great money, great job, but I didn't have that personal job satisfaction there. And I told him that I was interested in coming back as an investigator. A little bit different, and I told him I have some ideas of things that we can discuss. He ends up hiring me back, and I came back. The one officer who was doing tech crimes when I left back in 2008, he was still there doing tech crimes.
Oh, wow. That's excellent.
Yeah. Still like most jurisdictions, though, we had this big backlog of cases, of trying to keep up with cases. And I got to thinking, okay, I have all these fantastic, brilliant students in class that I teach. And I'm thinking, is there any way to utilize them to help out with this backlog of investigations? So it started off with me talking to the prosecutor, and I said, hey, I would like to just have one intern each semester work with me and see how they do. We did that, and both of the students I had for the first academic year did fantastic, just outstanding. So I put together a proposal that I presented to the prosecutor's office and to Notre Dame of I want to formally establish this student intern program where interns are working out of the cyber crimes unit, which that's really nothing groundbreaking or new because a lot of jurisdictions have stuff like that. A caveat to it, though, is I told the prosecutor, I said, I would like you to swear them in as law enforcement officers so they have the power to write their own affidavits, search warrants, that they can examine any type of case there is without any roadblocks in the way. It took some discussions, and he finally agreed that, yes, that sounds like it's a good idea. So we then went to 3 students. So it was myself and 3 students in this student investigator program. That was 5 years ago. Since then, we have expanded from 3 to 6 to 10. We are at 16 this year, and next year we'll be at 20 investigators. I joke with the prosecutor because when we expanded to 3 students, so this was 4 years ago, his vision, what he said to the media, he's like, these kids are doing a fantastic job. I envision at some point, I would like a room full of 20 of these students that are working on all of these cases. And guess what? We're going to have a room of 20 students that are working on these cases now. They do fantastic on them. There's pretty much no restrictions they have due to being sworn in, and they work on all the digital forensics cases in the county. Because of that and having that workforce, we completely eliminated any backlog that we have. So we have no forensics backlog.
No backlog. And
0.
This work is being done let's be frank, I believe your interns are paid, but this is a lower rate than you would be if you had 20 full-time
Yes.
law enforcement examiners. And you are saving a lot of time in being able to actually lead, mentor, and train because you're not bogged down having to handle all of the paperwork that traditionally would need to be done by a sworn investigator, such as the affidavits, the warrants, etc. So that is just brilliant.
It's worked out fantastic.
And I would like to say I have had the pleasure of meeting several of your students, interns, sworn investigators. I actually even feel bad when I speak of brilliant people like Brianna Drummond and Lexi Van Hovel and Laura Hernandez. I feel bad calling them students because I don't think of them as students. They're forensics examiners. They are working real live cases every day. So let's just say sworn investigator students in your lab. Those investigators, I have had the privilege of seeing them teach other people when you hosted the Digital Forensics Cyber Camp 2 summers ago for women looking to get into digital forensics, sharing our field with high school age girls. I was blown away by their teaching ability. Several of them have spoken at multiple conferences, both about not only their experience as sworn investigators, but I've seen them speak about their research at multiple conferences, including big international conferences, everything from the Diana Initiative, which is part of one of the side conferences to DEF CON, to at the Magnet Virtual Summit. I've just had so many conversations with them, and I must say the quality of the investigators that you have is incredible, and they are so passionate about what they're doing, and they're technically acute, and I need to give you credit because you also make sure that they get training and certifications. So they are, when they are seeking their positions, I mean, they are already experienced with a degree. That is incredible. Just incredible what you're doing for them at the same time as for your agency, and zero backlog. So many labs would dream of that.
Yeah, and we've been able to maintain that backlog even with the cases starting to skyrocket. We're just this year we're up probably 40% over what we were last year.
Wow.
And for the first 6 months, I think in our lab, and we're not that big of a jurisdiction. All of St. Joseph County is only about 250,000 residents, and we're starting to do cases for other jurisdictions surrounding counties. But in the first 9 months of this year, we were at right around 600 forensics exams that have been done out of the office, and 80% of those are being done by the students, and they're doing just a fantastic job on them. And you're right in that it's getting them this real world experience of stuff that they're working on. Some of the investigators have been in the unit several years. They've got under their belt over 100 criminal cases of devices that they've examined. So it's just great experience for them to get. And like I said, it benefits me in that it's not me having to do 600 devices anymore, and it benefits the county because they get paid for it, but the majority of their salaries comes from either from the university or from grants that we've gotten. So actual cost to St. Joe County taxpayer is very minimal. It's my salary is pretty much it. So it's just a win-win for everyone.
So one of the things I love is being able to multiply your impact, right? It's like one of the things I really strive to do. That there was a time in my life where I worked one case at a time, and I was head down in that case, and that case got out. And you were the same way. And the whole idea is, how can I now at this point multiply my impact so that I am having impact on thousands, hundreds of cases? And you're doing that not only by physically having those 3 to 20 over the last 5 years sworn investigator students in your lab, but the second they go out into the world, I've met many of your students who have left and graduated from Notre Dame and gone on to work for major consultancies in the Big Four, for major companies in the Forbes top 10, to other law enforcement organizations. So your students have gone on to go and share their knowledge that they gain there elsewhere. Students that maybe might not have even pursued a career in digital forensics, because it should be clear you're in a computer and technology division teaching forensics courses, but it's not specifically a forensics major where they come into the university knowing they want to be in forensics. And another thing, just because I happen to know it, not all of your students are even in technology majors that you accept into the internship.
Yeah, the majority of our students aren't technology majors. We have one computer science major. A lot of them do this computing and digital technologies minor that the university has, but everyone else is some other major, and it's typically from the kind of liberal arts field. So we've got sociology, economics, political science, Russian, film, theater, and television, just across the board of everything. And they're not tech majors. And one thing that I've found is that kind of that liberal arts type of education and degree, one thing it really makes them good at is critical thinking skills and creative thinking skills. Of those two skill sets of how to think, that if you're doing something expecting to see something and you don't, what do you do from there?
Yes. So we can teach the tech, right? We can teach
Exactly.
people exactly how to parse something. It's the mental capacity and thought to go, what am I not seeing? What's not here?
Yep.
To ask the questions, dig, and figure out the next thing. And I love the fact that as you're going through the interview process and everything, you're being open to a more diverse student set
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that you're bringing in those concepts. And then those students, when they actually hit the quote unquote real world or finish college and continue their professional lives, they have that meld of having that technical experience, but that thought process that's been ingrained in them in the university that is much larger and differentiated. And I just think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the influence of that is my education. Like I said, I've got bachelor's and master's degrees in psychology, nothing to do with tech or computer forensics. I see the benefit of it.
Yes, and how it informs so much, which I honestly think it's why you're such a brilliant leader. Seriously, if you guys want to understand more about Mitch's leadership style, I encourage you to check out the link for that presentation that was dropped by Kevin in the bar. It was an incredible talk and really inspiring. I'd also like to say that if you're interested in how his team has been able to solve 600 cases in the first 9 months, with the students working remotely because the university is not in person anymore, I did a panel with Mitch and Shelley, who was our guest last week, about how their two different environments, law enforcement and corporate, are handling forensics during the time of COVID. It's called social distancing while forensicating. And the reason I want to mention is the podcast is actually going to drop this week, the podcast recording. So it was a live webinar a couple of months ago, but we're releasing it as a podcast this week. So if you're curious, I highly encourage listening to it. Mitch has done some really innovative and smart things that you may want to adapt for your lab. So beyond even the people, the way in which he handled the technology to distribute his team is incredible. And moving forward, it's probably things we all need to be thinking about in the current times. So you're doing amazing things. And I've got to know, what is your go-to resource? Not necessarily for forensics, but what is Mitch's resource for all things?
Actually, for all things, I would have to say it is the students that I work with here, both from forensics and technical and from life perspectives on things. I get so much from them, from the daily interaction with them in the unit and in the classroom. First, forensically, and this may be just because their generation has grown up with technology. They have always used technology. I find that a lot of times they think differently on cases, on technologies, use it, and they think and come up with ideas during analysis that never even occur to me. So every day I'm learning stuff from them like that. And then I love that. Just getting to know them as people, and anyone who watches my talk on how my management style or leadership style, exactly what I mean there, of getting to know them and learning about them and that interaction with them. There is so much that I learned from them in that there were several significant viewpoints that I've had my entire life that pretty much this year I've changed perspectives on things, and this has come from having discussions with the students, seeing their perspectives, their thoughts on things, stuff that a lot of times when you're working in nothing but the police world, you get nothing but the perspective of police officers. And police officers, their perspectives tend to be a lot of times the same with one another. And having these students and talking to them about things have really opened up the way I think about certain things. So without a doubt, they are my go-to. They are, quite frankly, the reason why I am still in this position. I mean, yes, I love doing the investigations. I love, contributing to the community. The reason that I am in this position is 100% because of the students. If for whatever reason that program would go away, then I would go away. That is why I'm here, is because of that.
I love that. You know, you bring up a really good point about homogeneous thoughts, and you've actually brought it up twice. One in the diversity of skill sets, of backgrounds of folks, and how that lends to better and different thinking. But you also just talked about the diversity of the people you surround yourself with, and how
Yeah.
surrounding yourself with people who have different opinions, different generations, different motivations, different modalities of thought, that in itself strengthens you and helps you grow and gives you different perspective. And I think that's
And,
just such a pertinent thing for people to reflect upon, especially as we talk about people who live in echo chambers a lot of times. And you might not
mhm.
even recognize that you're
I,
in an echo chamber because your lab is all people of potentially the same generation in the same jurisdiction who have always worked under
mhm,
the same rules. And so they've adapted to that and become part of that machine by bringing in different thoughts and different perspectives.
mhm.
You can grow both the forensics lab and yourself. I just think it's brilliant. I love
Like
that.
one of the best compliments I got from a student, and it really wasn't intended to be a compliment, of just having one of these discussions about things, about the state of the country, things going on, about the death penalty, about the stuff with law enforcement, just all kinds of discussions that we have. And as I talked about my change perspective on some things, she said that, she goes, I give you a lot of credit for that. And like I said, this was meant as a compliment. She said, a lot of people your age, that is very difficult. You're so set in your ways that you're not open and receptive to these other viewpoints, so that you may hear them and just pretty much dismiss them. And that's one thing I hope I never want to be like that I always want to be open, receptive to all kinds of viewpoints on things.
Absolutely.
I love the fact that lifelong opinions and perspectives that I've had on things have changed because of hearing these different viewpoints and ideas and stuff that I never really considered before. And that's a lot of what the students bring to me.
I love that. I love the fact that you're so open to that growth. And, you know, I wonder this all the time too, in my teaching, like, do my students realize how much they impact me and how much I learn
Yeah.
from them? Because I 1000% get more from my students than they would ever or could ever get from me, than I could even possibly give. Like, it's amazing how much you are
Mhm.
informed, not just technically, but as a
Yeah.
human, by the perspectives and things that your students bring up, and
Mhm.
how you adapt to that and transform and go, wow, those are things I didn't even think of, because their experience is different than our experience. And I just love that.
Yeah, and a lot of them, a lot of students don't really realize that so much we get out of it. And you mentioned some of our students who taught the digital forensics camp here and the presentations that they're giving. As the students are doing more of that, of teaching out there, and even mentoring our senior investigators, mentoring new investigators, they're getting a good taste of that,
I
about
love that.
how rewarding it is to actually be that mentor to the next generation and teach them and bring them up. And they love that. And that's something that, leaving here, they've got that experience that they'll then take out into the real world to wherever they may go. So that's great.
Oh, that's just fantastic. And, you know, we've been trying to do that with this show as well. We've actually had people, we've had students on the show who are doing great contributions to the world of digital forensics, and I look forward to having some of those students on in the future as well. So, you know, and one of the reasons that that's been important to what we're doing is we wanted to show the perspective of people like James Duffy, who's 19-year-old and in college, but producing and sharing his research and building tools, and showing people who are new to the field, who are even older and are career transitioners and coming into the field, as well as people who have been doing this for since 2003 in digital forensics and law enforcement since 1989, like yourself, because there's different things to be learned from those different perspectives, and it's just so incredible. And you know, it's so much of what we're doing. So, speaking of your experience, is there a story you could share from the field?
Uh, yeah, probably one of my favorite digital forensics stories is a case that I worked several years ago, where It involved initially a 9-year-old girl who, as she was in grade school, unknown to anyone, the popular teacher, the teacher who everyone thought was, this is the best teacher this is who you want for a teacher. She made an allegation that when she was in grade school that she was sexually assaulted by him over a period of 2 years.
Wow.
She didn't disclose that till she got out of that school and was away from him. She disclosed to her mother that this abuse occurred. I ended up watching an interview that was done with her, and just watching that interview, the types of things she was saying and different poses that she was showing of, he made me do this, that I was thinking, there's no way someone that age would know that without experiencing that. And one thing she said in the interview is that he took pictures of me and he showed me the pictures on the back of the camera, which meant, okay, there's digital photos. And that's part of why I got involved in it, was because there's the digital evidence there. For the next 2 years, we ended up doing an interview. We ended up examining a home computer, a work computer of his, and really came up with nothing. And it literally was one of these he said, she said things that so many times those cases go away. I worked the case. I was probably 2 years into working it. And once a month, I would contact the parents and just tell them, hey, just so you know, we haven't forgotten about you. I am still working this. I have nothing to report from last month, but it is something still being worked on. We ended up developing leads of him being involved in online CSAM. And through that, there was nothing that tied him directly to the victim, but there was enough information there that the prosecutor was comfortable, based on the child's story and this newfound evidence of his online CSAM activity, that he issued a warrant for him. By this time, he had already resigned from his teaching position here, and he was back in the Chicago area working for a law firm because he was a lawyer. I made
you can't get a worse perp than a lawyer who has access to children as a teacher. That is, wow.
I contacted someone up in Illinois and said, hey, I have this arrest warrant to make arrangements to go up there. And what I asked them is, I drafted up a search warrant for his apartment and said, could you get me a search warrant up there? That way we've got a search warrant and arrest warrant for him. As this officer was at the state attorney general's office obtaining the search warrant, there was an FBI investigator there, and they got to talking, and the FBI investigator was getting a search warrant for a CSAM case. Through sheer coincidence, we were both going after the same target.
Oh, wow.
So we have a discussion with the FBI, and we made the agreement that you've already got your search warrant for the apartment. I've got an arrest warrant for him. Anything that I get from arresting him in the interview, I will share with you. Anything you get physical evidence-wise, you share with us. We had that agreement. We ended up going up there, served the search warrant. I placed him under arrest for the crime against the child. He pleaded not guilty to it, said, this is just another scam of him being railroaded. And the main thing that I was looking forward to is the digital evidence. We got several items from his apartment. It went to the FBI CART team. They did analysis on it and sent a report, but pretty much said we really didn't find anything that adds anything to the case, nor do we find anything related to your case. And then I asked them, could I get copies of all the E01 files and everything that you've got on it? And originally was told no on it, that it's their policy that once they do forensics, that another forensics examiner isn't going to examine the same evidence. And we had this back and forth a little bit until finally the two U.S. attorneys from the two jurisdictions reached an agreement, and they agreed, okay, I'll turn over the digital evidence. And the CART team did a fantastic examination on it, but all the CART team knew about it is on such and such day, there was this warrant served for CSAM. They didn't have, at this time, 4 years background knowledge that I had on this investigation.
So they did not have the details about the secondary investigation of hands-on sexual abuse, which is very different types of analysis than you would do for child sexual abuse material. You're looking, I mean, yes, both have to do with abuse of children, but they're different. You know the dates involved of when the child was abused. You're not talking about network data. You're talking about pictures and metadata of things that were possibly deleted and accessed. You're looking for a different set of data, and especially in a different time frame, especially being a 2-year-old incident.
Yeah.
And in the CSAM case, they may have been looking for more recent data. So it totally makes sense that without the details of your case, it's hard for them to find if you don't know what you're looking for, right?
Exactly. So I get the computer, and part of what I find is a number of ICQ names, AIM names, Yahoo names that he had, that the FBI found all those also. I also went into unallocated space, did a very meticulous search looking for other screen names that were ever used on that computer, and ended up coming up with about 10 additional screen names that the FBI didn't get in the initial examination. I took all of those names, sent them to NCMEC, and asked them to look for any prior cyber tip line reports on any of these names. I specifically remember coming back from a week-long training session in Orlando. I got back on a Friday at about 3 in the afternoon, and there's a DVD laying on my desk that is the results of this. And my thought was, I'm just going to pop it in and preview, okay, what sort of, are there any other types of reports? I put it in, and of those, I think there were close to 15 screen names that I sent them. There were close to 30 cyber tip line reports on those names.
Wow, that's a lot.
Thousands of images. So I call up my wife again, who years ago said, if you want to be a police officer, not be married to me. I call her up and tell her, hey, I'm back from Orlando. I'm in the office. I'm working a case from something that I just got. So I start going through the information, and there's tens of thousands of pictures. Most of them, the normal CSAM that, you come across. And I'm going through, and I stop on one particular photo. It was the inside of this room that the student described as the kiln room, where there's a kiln furnace in there. She described how it was red, what the walls looked like, and there was a nude picture of the victim, who, it was 4 years prior to that, so she looked a lot younger, but it was her nude in that room in school in exact pose that he had said, or that she had said he'd put her in. And I literally just froze when I saw that. I cropped the photo, went to her house, met with her parents, and said, I got a photo to show you to see if you can identify it, and showed them the photo, and they're like, yeah, that's our daughter. That find ended up, this case was destined to go to trial, and this poor victim would have been smeared in court because she had the reputation, and ironically, the teacher teaching right in the classroom next to the suspect was a really good friend of mine. And I talked to her. I said, completely off the record, I'm working this. Give me your thoughts on this teacher. And she said, he is the greatest guy in the world. I'm like, give me your thoughts on this student. And said that she's a troublemaker. She lies a lot. She's always getting sent from the principal's office. And after this all came about, the reason she determined she's a troublemaker and getting sent to the principal's office is she knew she was going to be abused. So she's acting out, getting in trouble, and would rather take her chances going to the principal's office. So
she's being traumatized, the trauma, of course.
Yeah. he ended up, one of the best moments in my career is when I called up the defense attorney and told him that, hey, just so you know, I now have a picture of the victim that was taken in the school, nude, in the exact room that she said it was taken in. I said, I'll be happy to come over to show that to you. And he just replied, that won't be necessary. He ended up pleading guilty to federal charges related to the CSAM and got, I believe, a 10-year federal sentence out of that. Right after his federal sentence, he's going to start his state sentence where he agreed to a 30-year term for molesting the child. But that case was broken through digital forensics of being able to find that photo from that long ago.
I have goosebumps, and I'm so happy you were able to find justice for that girl, for that victim. I would say two really interesting points is one, it's obvious that you used your psychology background there to make a determination that if this was to go to court, even though there was sound evidence, that the victim would be re-victimized, and that the potential of a jury to believe based on the reputations and everything else could be in jeopardy because of the way people think and the way that people take when people give personal opinions of people, that those are accepted regardless of maybe what digital evidence may show. So that's brilliant in itself. And in terms of the digital evidence, a couple of really interesting points. One, sometimes you really need to know the information about a case to do the best investigation. And I kind of want to shout out to prior investigators who gave me cases where it was like find all bad. And I was like, can you please tell me about the case so I know what I'm looking for? Because it really does make a difference. Secondly, if there's two different types of investigations, it does sometimes make sense to have a second examiner look over your work. It also gives points to peer review and to digging past what the tools tell you, because the tools didn't pick out those initial things. You had to manually carve and unallocate it, know what you're looking for, know that you were looking for screen names, do secondary tracing, follow up on those leads, and just such good work from an investigative standpoint, from a digital forensics technical standpoint, but also from thinking about how you proceed with that case and arming the prosecution with that information so that they could seek, not going to trial and instead a plea. It just makes sense. And to hear that justice is served is very wonderful. Just excellent work. Thank you for sharing that story.
Thank you.
So, leaving the heavy topic of technical forensic investigations that maybe have subject matter that's not the friendliest, we all have to, in order to deal with those things, we have to have things outside our work. If we didn't, we wouldn't survive. So, what makes Mitch tick outside of forensics?
Several things. One thing I have been very good at throughout my entire police career is that when I'm off work, I pretty much switch to the off work mode, that I'm able to put things aside until the next day. With technology, I make it a point that every night I essentially go dark around 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Every one of my devices is put on do not disturb mode, and I won't look again until the morning. So I try to do that, stepping away from technology. I am very, very active in that. As Lynn says, if I go a period of a couple of days without working out, I get grumpy. But I will exercise every single day. I am fortunate in that I am probably one of the few people in the world who I really, really love exercising and pushing myself and doing stuff. So every morning I'm up by 4:30 in the morning, and the first thing I do to start my day is anywhere from an hour to 2 hour workout. So that's a good outlet, especially the stress relief of exercise, the bump in endorphins from that is just fantastic. And then in an effort to more step away from things, I've actually found I guess I could call it a renewed interest Lynn's family has land up in northern Michigan that when Lynn and I were 17 years old, she says, "Hey, do you want to go camping with my family?" Of course, I'm 17 years old. This is my new girlfriend. Of course, I'm going to say, yes, I want to go. So we go up there camping, and I realize that camping is, here is a plot of land. That is all you get. Here's a fire pit. So it is digging the restroom and tents and stuff like that. And at 17 years old, I really had no interest in that. So I went the one time. I found renewed interest in that this year, where out of the blue, I told Lynn, I said, I want to go camping this year. And she's just laughing at me. The next thing, I'm on Amazon, and I order a tent, sleeping bag, just all kinds of stuff. And she's like, "Are you serious? Are you really going?" And we've gone a couple times this year where just going up there and completely unplugging. Shutting off the phone, taking off the watch, and just enjoying the time out there doing stuff like hiking, swimming, chopping wood, cooking over a fire, to the point that we're going to be doing more and more of that. But I just found it did so much just to kind of recharge, to step away, to do something like that.
Mitch, I go camping every weekend too. Every weekend. So we used to tent camp, but my husband and I have decided that we're no longer tent campers. So we do have a travel trailer. But that's because in the Marine Corps, we did a lot of tent and dig hole camping, to say the least. But we do it to unplug, exactly what you say. My phone goes off. It stays on a charger, turned off for emergencies. But while I am off doing that, it energizes me and allows me to focus and allows me to be with nature. And I know a little difference in age allows me to spend time with my children in ways that are disconnected, where everybody's not playing a video game or working all the time. So it's just brilliant. I love it. I love the fact that you find that space to reconnect. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. So I like to close with the most interesting question to a lot of people who listen to us, and especially with both your background and the things you're doing now with the student investigators, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to get started in digital forensics?
Probably the good starting point is you have to have this curiosity level of wanting to know how and why things work. All through my life, I was that kid who took all the toys apart to see what was inside them and stuff like that. But it's this curiosity of researching things and looking at things, exploring things. You don't necessarily have to go to a 4-year college and get a computer science degree or a digital forensics degree. There are a lot of formal information. There are a lot of free resources out there. The forensics community is fantastic, and pretty much how they embrace everyone and anyone who is looking for help in something. It's just incredible how many people are willing to help. All you have to do is ask. It is that simple. All you have to do is ask. Our students have done it where they've run into something on an exam that they're not seeing what they think they should see, or they're not sure what to do, and they talk to me about it, and I'm really not sure. And then they reach out to someone, and then instantly there's a response, and then the next thing there's a Zoom session sharing screens, and they're going through showing information. It's just fantastic. So don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to do your own research to learn information. There's so much unknown with digital devices, and so much that you can look into and figure out information. You can then talk about and present or publish out there, just new information, stuff that you figure out. That's pretty much, I think, the best way to get into the field. For the most part, people aren't going to care if you have this top level college education, but if you do some sort of unique new research that you found something that, hey, no one else has seen this, or no one else has been able to explain this, and you figure it out, that's going to carry so much weight in your career and advancing in the field. You just can't be afraid to reach out and ask for help and guidance on things, because I don't know of any instance in this field of any of my students or anyone else who has reached out to someone in the forensics community for something and has been told, well, no, I don't have time for you, or who hasn't received a response. You'll get a response, and you'll find that people are so willing to help you.
100%. You brought up so many great points there that I think are just spot on, right? One, it is great if you've got a degree in computer forensics, but you don't work comp sci. But you do not need that. You can still be in this field. You brought up the fact that there's both formal training and free resources. I mean, there are so many free resources, and then there are resources to help you find resources, right? So if you don't know where to look, there are resources to help you get there. DFIR training, about DFIR, This Week in Forensics, for Diva, lots of sites to help you find the things that you need to find. And then when you still have questions, reaching out. I can't name an author, a presenter, someone who's done research who isn't willing to talk about it, hear how to expand it, try something different with it. And this whole concept of, I think it's scary, because I think a lot of us say, one of the best things you can do is do some new research and publish or present it, share it with the community. If you do something novel and new, people will respect it and will automatically know that you have the mental mindset to do forensics. Like, if you can do the thing that's not parsed by the tool, you can do this job. And I think that scares people, but I don't think they realize just how much we don't know. That's because we don't know what we don't know, and things are changing all the time. So if you need topics, reach out. We'll tell you lots of topics. We'll tell you to look at apps you've never thought of, or say, hey, name an app you use that you don't think is supported by commercial tools, or name an app that you think is new and up and coming, or talk about a type of data you want to know if it exists. And then test it. Like, it's huge, the amount of things we don't know, and we don't know until you research them and share them. And then you're one of us, right? You're one of us just by listening to this. You're part of this community. And Brett just said it's the best community ever, and I couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for being a part of it, Mitch. Thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for continuing to teach and increase your impact and mentor, and for the passion you have for bringing new people into the field and for learning from them. Just thank you for what you're doing.
Actually, one thing we didn't touch on that is probably, I think, one of the most unique aspects about our unit, and actually something that I am kind of very proud of. I work in law enforcement, which is a male-dominated industry. I work in technology, which is a male-dominated industry. Of our 16 students, 15 of them are females and one male. That wasn't by any particular design or anything. Through the interview process, we have found that the female students, their thinking process and how they go about doing things, they kind of rose to the top in all of the interviews, and that carries on in the work that they're doing. So like I said, it's 15 out of 16 are female students working in the unit, which is really kind of unheard of in the field.
You bring that up, and I would say that there's a lot of initiatives right now to help bring young women and other underrepresented minorities to our field. And I would say that there are so many fantastic, brilliant female examiners, many of which have been featured on this show, many who will be featured in the future, that I've had the esteemed privilege of working with or learning from or collaborating with. And I like to think that that's changing. I will tell you, just in the mix of students I have in my class, when I did my master's in digital forensics, I was the only student in my class. I think there was another woman who graduated the same year as I did. But now I'd say my classes range from 25 to 30% female, which is a dramatic change. And we're changing and shifting as an industry. And I think that's wonderful. I'll tell you right now, with COVID, I actually don't know the diversity of my class. It sounds really weird, but I know
No.
names, but I don't make assumptions, and I'm not seeing them or necessarily getting all of their pronouns in their work. It's a lot of asynchronous type communication. But I have seen a dramatic shift, and I just think it is brilliant that it's becoming normal and not a unicorn thing. And I just think that's wonderful. And that's the most important thing, that there are great women putting out great technical work, just as there are great men, just as there are great folks from many different underrepresented groups. And really, at the end of the day, please share your knowledge. Know that there are people who can help you and mentor you, and that there are people like you in this field. And if you don't think there are, if you need to find a mentor because you're looking for somebody who represents you, let me know. I'll help you find someone. I'll connect you to someone who's doing great work. I'm sure Mitch would do the same, because there are so many great people. Great point. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you again for everything, and for everything you're doing for the field. It's just awesome.
Thank you.
And with that, thanks everyone for joining us for this week's episode of Cash Up. Next week, I have the distinct pleasure of talking to Jad Sliaba, who you may know as the CTO and founder of Magnet Forensics, and I know as my boss. So that'll be interesting. A brilliant background and has been doing some really incredible things, and I can't wait for you guys all to hear about all of the crazy, wacky, amazing stuff that Jad does and contributes to this community. And we have some great guests following up. We go a little international. We've got Veronica Schmidt, who's currently in Norway but from South Africa. We've got Shayna Daly from Australia, and then we'll follow up with episodes from Ryan Benson, Robert Duhart, Geraldine Blay, Brian Moran, and so on and so forth. Really looking forward to seeing you next week on Cash Up. Thanks, everyone. Bye.